October 10, 1492. 3 ships are about to vanish beneath the Atlantic, and with them, the entire future of human civilization. Christopher Columbus and his crew are 2 days from making landfall in the Bahamas, but they will never arrive. A hurricane, unnamed and unrecorded in our timeline, swallows the Santa María, the Pinta, and the Niña whole, leaving no survivors. Europe never discovers the Americas, not in 1492, not in 1500. Perhaps not for another century. What happens to the world when this single moment is erased? When the Aztec Empire never falls, when smallpox never crosses the ocean, when the entire trajectory of global power shifts in ways almost too massive to comprehend? You are about to witness an alternative history so profound that every map, every language, every nation you know would be fundamentally, irrevocably different. This is the world without Columbus. And it is absolutely nothing like the one you're living in right now. When news of Columbus's disappearance reaches Spain in early 1493, Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand are devastated, but not deterred. They've invested heavily in finding a western route to Asia, and one lost expedition won't stop them. But here's the critical detail. Columbus was uniquely obsessed, uniquely persuasive, uniquely wrong about the Earth's circumference in exactly the right way. Other explorers are more cautious, more accurate in their calculations. They know the westward journey to Asia would be impossibly long. Without Columbus's lucky miscalculation leading to accidental success, Spain redirects its resources. Portugal continues dominating the eastern route around Africa, reaching India in 1498 under Vasco da Gama. The Spanish focus on Mediterranean expansion and North African conquest instead. France and England, still recovering from the 100 Years' War, have no reason to look westward. The Atlantic remains a barrier, not a bridge. For decades, the Americas continue existing in complete isolation, their civilizations developing along utterly independent trajectories. The Aztec Empire expands. The Inca consolidate power. Indigenous technologies evolve without interruption. It's not until 1510 that European contact finally occurs, but it happens in a completely different way. A Portuguese fishing vessel, blown dramatically off course during a storm, makes accidental landfall in what we call Brazil. The crew returns to Lisbon with tales of a vast new land, but unlike Columbus's triumphant return, these sailors bring no gold, no spices, no evidence of Asian civilization. Portugal quietly sends exploration missions, but keeps the discoveries secret under the Treaty of Tordesillas, claiming everything for themselves. The Portuguese establish small trading posts along the Brazilian coast, but without gold or clear routes to Asia, these settlements remain minimal, scientific curiosities more than colonial projects. Meanwhile, something remarkable happens in the Americas. Without the catastrophic disease pandemics that decimated indigenous populations in our timeline, the Aztec Empire reaches its peak population of over 20 million people. The Inca Empire extends its road systems and administrative control across the entire Andean region. These civilizations have nearly 2 more decades to develop their technologies, their political systems, their military capabilities. By 1520, Tenochtitlan is the largest city in the world, surpassing Constantinople and Beijing. Its population exceeds 400,000, its causeways and aqueducts represent engineering marvels, and its markets overflow with goods from across Mesoamerica. The Aztec Empire has refined its tributary system into a sophisticated economic network. But here's what's crucial. Without European diseases arriving in the 1520s, indigenous populations never experienced the apocalyptic 90% die-off that occurred in our timeline. Communities remain intact. Agricultural systems continue feeding dense populations. Political structures maintain stability. The Inca Empire, called Tawantinsuyu, stretches from modern Colombia to central Chile, connected by 40,000 kilometers of roads better maintained than anything in Europe. The empire's Quipu record-keeping system has evolved into an increasingly sophisticated form of data management. Some historians in this timeline even suggest it's developing toward a form of written language. Neither empire knows that across the ocean, European powers are slowly, cautiously beginning to take interest in these distant lands. But when contact comes, it will not be conquistadors facing dying populations. It will be something far more complex. When Spanish ships finally arrive in the Caribbean in 1524, they encounter something they never expected: organized resistance. The populations haven't been decimated by smallpox, measles, and typhus because those diseases haven't arrived yet. When disease does come, it spreads more slowly, and indigenous populations, though severely affected, don't experience total collapse. The Spanish establish a foothold on Hispaniola, but it's contested territory. The indigenous Taino population mounts organized resistance that continues for years. Word spreads through Caribbean trading networks. Mainland empires hear rumors of pale-skinned strangers arriving in floating houses. The Aztec Empire, under a different ruler than Montezuma in our timeline, sends reconnaissance missions to investigate these newcomers. They observe Spanish weapons, horses, and tactics. They adapt. Indigenous leaders begin forging metal weapons similar to Spanish steel. They domesticate horses captured from Spanish outposts. Most importantly, they recognize the threat these foreigners represent. By 1530, the geopolitical situation is not a handful of conquistadors overwhelming empires, but rather a complex multi-sided conflict involving European powers, indigenous empires, and various allied factions. It looks less like conquest and more like the kind of protracted colonial conflicts that characterized European involvement in India or Southeast Asia. The 16th century doesn't see the rapid European colonization of the Americas that occurred in our timeline. Instead, it becomes a century of fortified coastal trading posts, uneasy treaties, and periodic warfare. Spain controls fragments of the Caribbean and small portions of the Mexican coast. Portugal maintains its Brazilian settlements, primarily focused on Brazilwood trade. France and England establish competing outposts in North America, but none can penetrate deep into the interior where indigenous confederacies have organized defensive alliances. The crucial difference is population. Without 90% mortality rates from disease, indigenous peoples maintain numerical superiority. European colonization is slow, expensive, and constantly challenged. Many Spanish soldiers die in skirmishes against organized Aztec or Maya forces. The cost-benefit analysis of American colonization looks far less attractive to European crowns. Meanwhile, an unexpected consequence emerges. Indigenous peoples begin adopting European technologies while maintaining political independence. Metalworking spreads rapidly through the Americas. Horses become integrated into indigenous warfare and culture decades earlier than in our timeline. Some coastal indigenous groups even begin building ocean-going vessels, learning navigation techniques from captured European sailors. The technological exchange flows both directions, creating a multipolar American continent. By 1560, something unprecedented emerges. The Aztec Empire has transformed. Facing external European pressure and internal political reorganization, it evolves from a tributary empire into a more centralized military state. Metal weapons are now standard. Cavalry units operate using horses bred from Spanish stock. A class of indigenous military strategists studies European warfare, developing countertactics. The empire establishes its own coastal naval presence, small but growing. Similar transformations occur throughout the Americas. The Inca Empire adopts metal weapons and begins experimenting with firearms, obtained through trade and reverse engineering captured Spanish arquebuses. The Iroquois Confederacy in North America, facing pressure from French and English settlements, expands and formalizes its democratic governing structure earlier than in our timeline, eventually spanning from the Great Lakes to the Atlantic coast. Perhaps most significantly, written language spreads rapidly. Indigenous peoples adopt modified forms of the Latin alphabet, creating written versions of Nahuatl, Quechua, and dozens of other languages. Historical records are now written, preserved, and disseminated. This accelerates technological and political development across both continents. The Americas are not isolated or technologically stagnant. They're adapting, evolving, and in some regions, matching European developments. But what about Europe? Without massive influxes of American gold and silver in the 1530s and 1540s, the Spanish economy follows a completely different trajectory. Spain doesn't become the dominant superpower it was in our 16th century. The price revolution that transformed European economics never occurs. The massive inflation caused by American silver doesn't destabilize European markets. This has cascading effects. Without Spanish dominance fueled by American wealth, the Protestant Reformation unfolds differently. The Habsburg dynasty lacks the resources to wage the extensive religious wars that dominated European politics. France and England emerge as more balanced rivals to Spanish power. The Atlantic Triangle trade never develops as it did in our timeline because large-scale plantation agriculture doesn't take root in the Americas. European demand for enslaved African labor is dramatically reduced. This fundamentally alters the history of millions of people. The European Renaissance continues, but scientific interest shifts. Without exotic American specimens flooding into Europe, naturalists focus more heavily on Asia and Africa. The scientific revolution takes different paths. European cartography develops more slowly because the Americas remain partially mysterious. And intellectually, Europeans must confront an unsettling reality: that advanced civilizations exist beyond their reach, civilizations they cannot easily conquer or control. By 1600, Earth has developed into something our timeline never saw: a genuine multipolar world. European powers control coastal trading networks and several colonial territories, but haven't penetrated the American interior. The Aztec Empire has reformed into the Mexican Confederation, a looser political structure incorporating multiple states using both indigenous and adapted European governmental concepts. The Andean region is dominated by a transformed Inca state that maintains traditional administrative structures while incorporating new technologies. North America develops its own complex political landscape. The Iroquois Confederacy has become a major power, conducting diplomacy with European colonies and indigenous neighbors alike. In the Mississippi River Valley, the descendants of Cahokia have built a new urban civilization, stimulated partly by trade goods flowing from the coasts. Transatlantic exchange continues, but it's trade and diplomacy, not conquest. European merchants operate trading posts under treaties with indigenous powers. Some Europeans immigrate to the Americas, not as conquerors, but as settlers under indigenous law. Some indigenous diplomats and merchants travel to Europe, establishing cultural exchange in both directions. The Columbian exchange still occurs. Maize eventually reaches Europe, potatoes transform European agriculture, but the exchange is gradual, negotiated, not catastrophic. Disease still takes a terrible toll, but over generations, not in a single apocalyptic wave. The Americas develop immunity while maintaining political sovereignty. So what did we lose when Columbus made landfall in 1492 instead of drowning in that storm? In our actual timeline, European contact triggered the greatest demographic catastrophe in human history. 90% of indigenous Americans died within a century. Entire civilizations vanished. Languages disappeared. Knowledge systems were destroyed. Millions of Africans were enslaved and transported across the Atlantic. The wealth extracted from the Americas fueled European global dominance for centuries. But in this alternative timeline, the Americas develop independently for crucial decades longer. Indigenous civilizations adapt and survive. The world becomes genuinely multipolar. Neither timeline is utopian. Both involve conflict, death, and suffering, but the balance of power is fundamentally different. Perhaps most hauntingly, This alternative history forces us to confront a question we rarely ask. How much of our world was inevitable, and how much was contingent on one man's lucky survival? On weather patterns in the Atlantic, on random chance. The world without Columbus is a world we can barely imagine. And yet, it was just one storm away from being our reality. What other pivotal moments in history hung by such slender threads? What other worlds are we living beside, separated only by a single decision, a single life, a single storm?